Hello folks, it's the Pace Chaser again. Welcome to another one of my videos. This is another one of the model reviews where we look at some of the older die-casts that are available on the second-hand market. And today we've got the EFE Mark 1 Bristol VR. And the one I'm looking at is release 38122 in the livery of Solent Blue Line. So we'll take it out of the box and we'll have a look at what we've got. So I did a separate video on the Mark 2 and Mark 3 VR of EFE. You can check that out on my channel. I did mention it's a completely different casting. The Mark 2 and Mark 3 is the same casting for both. The lower front and the lower rear are interchangeable between the vehicles, just unbolts. And the EFE casting was a two-part one. The upper and lower deck are separate. The dividing line's just above where the darker blue band is in the middle of this one that I've repainted. Whereas the Mark 1 was a completely different casting altogether, which is why I've done it separately. It's a one-piece casting. The chassis comes out, but the bodywork is actually in one piece, which makes it look a lot better. You've not got the seam line in the middle. Now, I apologise if you were expecting an unbiased review, because this is an absolutely cracking model. I used to have one years ago. As many middle-aged collectors will appreciate, sometimes you have to reduce your collection for various reasons, and I had to, and I've always wanted to get another one. I got rid of the original one I had, and I've just managed to acquire another one. So this one, as I say, catalogue number 38122, released in September of 2015, and it's in the livery of Solent Blue Line. The rail company was a subsidiary basically of Southern Vectis, the operator on the Isle of Wight. It was owned 75% by Southern Vectis and 25% by its management, and it set up competitive services in Southampton, and it was set up in 1987. The rail vehicle SDL 637J, which was Solent Blue Line's vehicle fleet number 07, was new to Southern Vectis in April of 1971, and it transferred to Solent Blue Line in May 1987 when Solent Blue Line was set up, and the rail bus was scrapped in March 1989. As I say, it's an absolutely beautiful model. The flat front VR is in itself, and this livery really sets it off. Way back in about 1989, my dad bought me a copy of this, Major Bus Operators, South West England, and it had this photo on the front of a Solent Blue Line bus, and I wanted a model of one sort of after that, basically. So I had to wait quite a long time, as I say, September 2015, before EFE released one in that livery. So as always, we'll start with the front. The Mark 1 was different to the Mark 2 and 3, and EFE have represented that. If you look, the Mark 2 and 3 is much more curved. And it's also wider at the upper deck of the front. The Mark 1 is narrower, and the dome is less curvaceous, and that's well modelled on this release. The windows are nicely done as well. As always, they're plugged in from behind on EFE models, but the ventilator's nicely modelled there as well. Come down, the destination indicator is printed on, so they can do different ones. There have been various releases of this casting. Some with the Scottish triangular destination blind, some with the Tilling T-shaped destination blind. So just print it on so they can do the various different variations of it. Little fleet name, as it should be, printed on there. You got the ventilators part of the casting there, which look very effective indeed. And the windscreen is a bit of a triumph as well. They were quite narrow and very, very flat on these buses, and that is represented really well on this. I went on when I reviewed the Mark 2 and 3 about the top-mounted windscreen wipers, which on Mark 2 and 3s were not typical. They were very unusual, but Mark 1s tended to have top-mounted wipers, the electric wipers, and they're represented nicely on this. So nicely moulded onto the windscreen. Windscreen is a bit loose, as you can see on this one, so it's something to watch. Just make sure it doesn't drop out, but if it does, it's not a problem. The windscreen actually goes in from the outside. The rest of the glazing comes in from the inside. But this pushes in from the outside, so if it falls out, just push it back in again. And we come down to the lower front. The indicators and side lights nicely done there. The headlight surround and grille surround part of the casting, again looking very nice indeed. And the headlights, the grille is printed on in its space in the casting, and there's a representation there of the Bristol and ECW badges, and the registration there, SDL 637J. Go around to the near side. The wheels look pretty effective on this, nicely done. The doors as well, the individual leaves marked with the little black dividers there printed on, which looks really, really good. The glazing is a single unit. As I say, it's a single piece body shell, so there's the glazing for the sides is one piece. It's a really big piece of plastic that fits into both the upper and lower deck apertures, but it gives a flush glazed effect, as you can see. And something else you can see on these as well, the actual sort of sticky out bit of the windows. I'll show you what I mean with some glazing from Leyland National. So the bit where it protrudes from the actual glazing strip there is actually painted in the colour that the surround would be. So in this case it's painted a cream colour because this would have had cream window rubbers. Some of them are painted black to represent black window rubbers, and it's a very nice detail. It looks really effective. Just something to bear in mind if you are repainting one, that it might end up with the wrong coloured window rubbers. It is possible to repaint them, but it's a really long and careful job, and I wouldn't recommend it, so just bear that in mind. The actual vents are printed on. They're not moulded unlike the Mark 2 and 3. They're not raised in the moulding. They are just printed on, but they look quite effective anyway. Not perhaps as effective as they would if it was just raised slightly, but yeah, they look pretty decent. And you can just about see the rear grille, which is part of the casting there as well. It's hard to see in the darkness of the blue, but yeah, it is there. Go around to the back, again nicely done. The shape of the rear dome, again not as curvaceous as on the later ones, and nicely represented. Window rubbers represented again on the back window there quite prominently. Some panel mouldings there in the casting. Got the registration plate, the prototypical really small rear lower deck window, the little grills to ventilate the engine in the back panel, and the flap represented as well, that you lifted up to access the emergency engine stop and things like that. All nicely done. Lights slightly raised from the casting as they should be, and all looking pretty decent. Go around to the offside, again nicely done. The grille different size to the near side one as it should be, again part of the casting, and the windows looking effective again. Again nicely detailed. You've got the separate mirrors. I'm not quite sure they should be bright yellow. You could probably paint them in a slightly more subtle colour, but they're looking pretty decent anyway. The roof, not much to report. The panel lines moulded on as you would expect, and then we go underneath. You've got a representation of the chassis framing, the fuel tanks and things like that. Now these later EFE releases, this is shortly before they went into receivership in 2016, but they made an effort to paint the interior a bit more. The basic moulding is cream, including the floor unfortunately, so if you are taking one apart to repaint it, they would benefit from painting the floor grey. But as you can see, the seats are picked out in a green colour, which the real ones would have been. The seat back grab rails are picked out in silver, and the seat backs themselves are cream, which again they would have been in real life, so I'm just trying to get some lighting onto it for you. But yeah, it does look really good. They did make an effort to do more than one colour on the interior on these later ones, which was nice to see. So all in all, it's a really nice model. Are there any problems with it? Well, it's a little bit glossy, as a lot of die-cast models tend to be. The finish is a little bit glossy. It would benefit if you could bother to do it from taking apart, taking the windows out and giving the whole thing a spray of satin varnish just to tone it down a bit. And the wheels do look a little bit plasticky as well, but apart from that, as I say, it is an absolutely cracking model. It's one of my absolute favourites, is the flat front VR, and especially in this livery. I love the Solent Blue Line livery. It's hard to think now. I mean, I'm doing this in April 2024, and it doesn't look that shocking at all. But back in 1987, when that appeared, with the yellow front and the big sort of diagonal blue lines and things, it really was like nothing that people had seen before. It really caused a stir, and that's why when I saw it on the front of that book back in 1989, it really made an impression on me. It's hard to remember now how hard hitting it would have been at the time. So we get on to price. Well, there was only one of these for sale on eBay when I looked. It was £39.95. The one we're looking at cost me £37.50, including postage, which is a lot more than I normally pay. But as I say, I wanted to replace it in my collection, so that's the price you pay. But as I say, when I had a look on eBay for the purposes of this video, there was only one for sale, and it was £39.95, including postage. The other flat front VR releases and different liveries that they've done vary between £32 and £44. So that's kind of what you're looking at. They are far more expensive than the Mark IIs and Mark IIIs. they're a bit harder to come by. As I say, EFE were close to coming into difficulties when they released the flat front VR, and as such there weren't that many releases done, so they are harder to find and they do command higher prices. But as I say, somewhere between £32 and £44 is what you're looking at. But it is a cracking model. It's well worth investing a bit of money in. I'm sure the value will probably only go up as time goes on, but it is a really, really nice model. It's one of my favourites, so I can't recommend it enough, really. As always, thank you for watching. Take care, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.